Hello and welcome back to the Ground Up Show. This is a bonus episode. That's right. Normally I release this podcast every single Wednesday. I've been pretty good about keeping this going for the past, I want to say like 6 or 7 months. I've been releasing an episode every single week. And this week I decided to do something a little bit differently. I wanted to come at you with an additional episode. So this one's going to be an AMA. I am answering some of your questions. You've been sending them in over the past couple of weeks, and I'm going to be answering questions about minimalism, productivity, building habits, multitasking, and a whole lot more. I've got people who've sent in audio as well as video clips, and I think it's going to be a good one. So let's play like the music intro, and then we'll get right into the podcast. You're listening to The Ground Up Show, a podcast that inspires creatives to make meaningful content and pursue their passions. My name's Matt Diavella, and I'm a filmmaker best known for the Netflix documentary Minimalism. And I'm sitting down with creators to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how to make an impact. All right, so before we get into some of these questions here, I wanted to provide a little update just on the status of the podcast, how I've been doing, how it's been growing. It has been a pretty amazing month or two. I've been plugging away at this podcast. I started it about a year and a couple months ago. I want to say like 15, 16 months ago is it when it first started. And the first podcast I published, I think it got 50 listens in the first couple days, which was, I was excited. It's cool to be able to see that some people were listening to it, and it grew a little bit. But I think for the first 6 months or so, it didn't break 3,000 downloads per month. So it was, it built up to that point, and then it just reigned steady for a very long time. I had a couple podcast episodes and people who had shared my podcast that gave it some spikes where I started to see a little bit more of an audience come in, and then it kind of dipped and plateaued a little bit. But the past 2 months have been nuts because I've been pushing very hard on YouTube. I've been making lots and lots of videos. That audience has grown quite a bit, and I've been able to send a lot of traffic from the YouTube channel over to this podcast, where you guys, maybe a lot of you, have first found out about this podcast through the YouTube channel. So I've been just doing my best to push as many people here as possible because it's where most of my time, energy, and creative resources are going. And it's paid off. So, man, I could actually let me pull it up. Let me give you a little look at the stats and how we're doing in terms of the monthly downloads for the podcast. So, so I went from February 18,000 downloads to March 31,000, April 51,000 downloads. That's just total per month, and that's also just on the iTunes and the podcasting apps, like people actually listening to it. So apart from that, people are obviously watching this. Maybe a lot of you are watching this, and it's honestly blown away. That's incredible. It just kind of, it blows my mind, and it continues to grow, and I'm really appreciative that you guys are tuning in. The only reason I say this is because it's called The Ground Up Show, and I want to be as transparent as possible to help you guys understand what it takes to make something. And while I'm not at a point yet where it's where I can monetize it. When in doubt, when you can't get a sentence out, just change how you were going to say the sentence. So I'm not at that point yet. Like, even if I did monetize it, I wouldn't make a surviving income off of it. But that said, it is getting closer and closer. And in the beginning, it's kind of frustrating because you are putting out a lot of content. Sometimes I feel like I'm putting out really great content, but still nobody is listening, nobody's watching, it's not grabbing hold. But you have to do that in order to get to the next point, and that's how you keep growing and keep building. You have to put in the work when the doubt is probably at the highest, when the obstacles are the largest, and you just got to keep going. That's the advice that I got very early on. And it's the advice that I continue to take and listen to myself, which is keep going, keep making stuff, keep focusing on your art and your passion, and also trying to do your best to get the message out there for whatever it is that you are creating. It can be a challenge, but that's part of the fun. Like when you look back on it later on, when let's say you are living in this future world where everything is made, you have a huge audience, a platform, you're creating whether it's films or art or music, and you have this amazing audience that's connecting with you. You're going to look back at some of those early days, and you're going to enjoy, and you're going to take pleasure in seeing the moments that at the time were struggle. It felt like pain. At the time, it felt like the lowest points of your life. But then when you look back on it, you're like, wow, those were the days when we were, bootstrapped, just getting started, had no money, we're just getting by. And I think you got to keep reminding yourself that this is a short period of time, but you're gonna miss it at some point. So yeah, the podcast is growing. That's been great. YouTube channel's doing well. It's been cool. It's the philosophy this whole time has been to just try to add value, try to find ways that I can impart some wisdom and some advice, the lessons that I've learned. That was the idea from the very beginning. About a year ago when I did the first episode, was like, hey, this is a time that I screwed up as a filmmaker. I think other people will enjoy to hear how things sometimes don't go according to plan. Let's get to questions. Actually, you know what? So there are people asking me all the time, Matt, what kind of shirt do you wear? I swear to God, that's the most commonly asked question. Where did I get my shirt? And also, what kind of watch am I wearing? And I don't really care. So I know some minimalist and people don't like talking about the actual things they wear, but because it's not about the things. But I understand it's sometimes hard to find a t-shirt brand that you like or a watch. This is from Simple Watch Company. And they are an Australian-based company, I believe. Natalie, my partner, who I think I mentioned in every episode. Natalie, she bought me this. She's amazing, and I love the watch. It's cool. Like I wear such a basic wardrobe that it's nice to have like a watch, something that adds a little bit more. Because I like to be stylish, as much as I like to be simple. I want to look good and feel good in my clothing and what I'm wearing. That said, the shirt is a J. Crew t-shirt. You can actually get them from J. Crew Factory. Like I think it's like a separate website, but they're cheaper. It was like, I don't know, $6, $7 for a t-shirt. And I've got a bunch of those. So that I just wanted to get that out of the way. Also, I know a lot of people are asking about my filmmaking process, how I make videos for YouTube, how I make this podcast, what is my setup like? And I am gonna get to those kinds of videos, and I'm really anxious and eager to get into them. Here's and I'll be totally upfront and honest why I haven't yet tapped into that. The main reason is because I plan on doing some courses, and that's going to be my first attempt to monetize this original content. I've got other stuff that I'm doing, feature-length documentaries and whatnot, but this is going to be my way to monetize this aspect of it. And when I do that, I want to also come out with all this other content that's actually going to help you guys and free advice around filmmaking and videos. And then that way, if you do want to learn more after those videos, I can send you the course. So I'm kind of being thoughtful about that. And before I put a lot of time and energy into it, I want to make sure I have all that funneled and ready to go, because that's going to be an important step. That's going to be when I, start to actually see if I can make this happen and make some money from it. But it's all exciting. It's all good things. All that said, let's get to the questions. I've got a question here from Craig Buckton. My question, do you have any recommendation, be it teachings, principles, or practices of minimalism other than your own interpretation that has inspired you? That was one of the main reasons why we made the documentary Minimalism, was not to just show one way in which you can be a minimalist. We wanted to show 15, 20 different ways. We wanted to show you that you can do it with a family, you can do it as a small business owner, you can do it living in a tiny house or traveling all around the world. A lot of the principles are similar. Stay intentional, be intentional about the things that you consume, be really thoughtful and mindful about the things that you bring into your life, whether it's media or physical objects. A lot of these are very similar, but the physical surroundings, the environment that these people live in are often very different. So if you haven't checked out the documentary, I think that might give you a couple different recipes that might apply to your own life. And I think I'm most interested in how minimalism can apply to your work life. We know a lot about how minimalism can apply to our personal daily lives, and how we can clear away the clutter, and you can watch a video on how to fold socks. But I'm really interested in the parts of the day that are spent in work, because work fills up so much of our life. It can often be 8 to 10 hours a day that we spend working. So I wanted to try to figure out ways to be most productive. One of those ways has been, and it was validified and clarified to me in a recent podcast interview that I did with Tyler Babin. He works for Gary Vaynerchuk, and it's all about creating pillars of content. So this is like one way that I simplify the kinds of content that I create. This is a way that I use minimalism and bring it into my work life, is instead of just having free reign and saying, I can create all the content I want, I can write a book, I can write a blog post, I can put out long format videos or feature films on YouTube. I get very specific about the kinds of content I create and just start with 1 or 2 pillars. And for me, I really have, I would say, 2 pillars. The one is the podcast, and the one is short form YouTube videos. And that's to be usually anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, no longer than that. And what you can do with those pillars, specifically the podcast, let's say I shoot a podcast interview, it's an hour and a half long. I can then take that and then create multiple forms of content with it. So I can create an excerpt for YouTube where I'll do something like this, where it's just I'm on camera, I'm talking to the camera, and I am cueing the clip. I'm, just giving you a little bit of background, my thoughts on leadership, and then it goes into the clip, and then I can play that excerpt and just add some real meat and context to it. And then boom, I've got an additional piece of content from this podcast. Now I can create short teasers for Instagram and for Twitter, and it's really limitless in the amount of content. Like I have so much content now at this point. I've recorded over 65 podcast episodes and filmed every single one of them. And so I have all of this, extra content that I can still use down the road. So what I plan to do, and what you'll see soon, is I'm going to be breaking out some past episodes that I've really enjoyed, bringing them back, and then, adding a little bit more context to them, maybe adding some B-roll and whatnot to make them a little bit more engaging, a little bit more interesting. But that's one way that I use simplicity in terms of my content strategy. So I kind of define the rules in which I create content, and that helps make sure that I don't get distracted with a new shiny idea that I'm really excited about in the moment, but that might not serve me in the long run. And of course, this is bound to change. I'm bound to mix things up a little bit, try new things, but this is a strategy that I use for about 90 to 95% of the content that I currently create. Javon Max says, I start and stop writing projects because I keep comparing myself to others. I also wish to be in a community to help build my skill and motivate others, but the catch-22 is that these are the same people I might compare myself to. I hate being insecure about this. Thoughts? So if you keep starting and stopping writing, I'm guessing that there's something that's distracting you from your work. And what I would recommend is put a daily practice. If writing is your thing, if you're passionate about writing, set a daily practice and a certain quota of words that you need to write. Whether it's 50 words or 500, pick something that's realistic that you can action on every single day. You can increase it down the road if you want. But now it seems like you need to just fall in love with writing and make sure, if you really do love the work, that's all you should be focusing on, and you shouldn't be distracted by what other people are doing. So put your ass in the chair every single day and force yourself to write 50, 100, whatever words it is. The second thing I would say is, since you do seem to be distracted, try to control the mediums. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, on those platforms, unfollow everybody who doesn't support or inspire you, and start to narrow down the kinds of people that can reach you. I think a lot of times we do not pay attention to this enough. We think, oh, I have no control over the media that comes to me. And we're not living in a world anymore where you turn on the local news on TV. Well, I guess we are a little bit, but most people that are listening to this, they're not sitting watching the nightly news every night. They get their news through social media. So be thoughtful. I mean, if you do want to be informed, go ahead, find a different, news sources that you can trust. Thank God I did not say an actual news source, because I feel it doesn't matter what you say, and I'm not going to say it. You could say any of these big news outlets and people flip out, because we're so volatile in terms of our news media. But anyway, if that's what you want to follow, then follow it. Just be aware that that's going to play an influence and a role in your life and how you feel throughout the day. So try to be as thoughtful and mindful as you can. The next thing I'd suggest is, after you do that, that's step one. Step two could null and void that, because I recommend deleting whatever isn't adding value. So if you have a Facebook account, but it's really distracting you and making you feel like shit more than anything else, if all you see is other people doing amazing things and you feel terrible about what you're doing, maybe delete it. Like, maybe it sounds like that's not going to add the most value to your life. It sounds like it's actually distracting you from finding happiness. If you do need it for business or for work, try to be thoughtful about how and when you use it. So schedule in your social media time, schedule in your email time. That's what I currently do. So I've found that I work best when I'm not distracted and working out of my inbox all day. I find that that's almost a form of procrastination. So I will open up my inbox and say, hey, who's got something for me to do? Like, not literally, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. I'm like, oh, is there an email that I can respond to? Is there something else I can do? Because I am procrastinating, and I know that, sitting down and doing the work is going to be the hardest thing for me to do right now. So I'm just avoiding it at all costs. But the truth is, once I was able to schedule it and say, I'll now schedule my email from 2 to 3 p.m., and just by saying that, I'm sure I'm going to get more emails right at 2 p.m. But 2 to 3 p.m., that's when I schedule my email use, and I'll just fly through it. And that's email and social media. So it's an hour a day. I think it's quite a bit of time, but I'd be spending way more time if I was just checking throughout the day in these micro checks, these micro distractions throughout the day. So I go through as quick as I can. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. Sometimes it's much shorter. Depends on how much email I get and how much social media posts I have. And sometimes I let things fall through the cracks, unfortunately. Sometimes I have, if it's a couple days since I've checked Instagram, I might have 50 to 100 DMs, and it's very hard. Like, I got fat thumbs, so it's like hard to go through and reply to all of them. I try to reply as many as I can, but at the end of the day, if it's distracting me from my real work, the work that those people are messaging me about to begin with, I'm not going to continue to distract myself. I will often read as many of them as I can, but then once 3 p.m. hits, I got to get back to work. And there was also a question Javon has about community and finding community, and the fact that those people are the same ones that are kind of in a way discouraging to him because he's comparing himself to them. And I think what you'll find is, when you find a community that is supportive and that is welcoming and brings you in with open arms, then you realize that it's kind of useless to compare yourself to other people. When you start to open yourself up to them and you tell them about how, hey, honestly, like, I feel a little bit bad sometimes, looking at some of your guys' work, because I compare myself to you and I feel down. I feel like shit. And what you'll find is that they probably feel the same exact way. The best people, Kanye West aside, the best people in any given industry go through tremendous amounts of doubt. They compare themselves to others. I do it. I'm not calling myself the best, but when I see other filmmakers, sometimes I get discouraged. I'm like, shit. But then I try to reframe it and I try to think, oh man, that person did a killer job with the resources and tools they had. Everybody is on their own path and their own journey. So you have to kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at other people's content and just create the best shit that you can. But that has helped me. It's helped me to know, just doing this podcast, to know that everybody goes through doubt. It's just part of the game. And those people that are best able to grapple with it are the ones that just keep going, because the doubt is not going to stop them. Nothing is going to stop them. And I've got an audio question here from Katie.
Hey Matt, this is Katie contacting you from upstate New York. And my question is it worth it for someone with considerable student loan debt to try to move somewhere with more opportunity for success, or to stay where they are in relative financial security? And I ask this because I graduated college last year with a degree in animation and a student loan bill of about $100,000. So I know you know what I'm talking about. So right now I do motion graphics, animation, and visual effects work freelance. But it's very hard for me to find clients and to network with people because I pretty much live in the middle of nowhere. But at the same time, I know it's a huge risk to try to move somewhere with more career opportunities, but with a huge financial burden on my shoulders. So that's it, and I would really love your advice. Thanks, Matt.
So one thing that I'll say up front in terms of the networking, I do think that in-person networking is very important, and it's much more productive and much more effective than it is hopping on the phone with somebody. When you hop on the phone with somebody and you ask them a few questions, or you try to network and connect with other people, those tend to be so fleeting. They just come up, and then I've had so many phone calls that there's no face, there's no human connection there to remember that by. So I have found that in-person networking is the best. So that is important. The thing that I would say, look, even before you move though, you almost need a reason to network and connect with people. You need something that you can provide them. Maybe it's a blog, maybe you want to interview them for something that you're writing, or maybe, even if you're lying, you could be like, I'm doing a research project and I would love to meet up with you for coffee so I can ask you a few questions about your work. That way there's almost like a reason and an excuse to meet up, especially for people that are reached out to a lot. Now, obviously there's going to be certain people that are very hard to get a hold of and network with, and people who are going to be a little bit easier. I found that, this podcast, I've talked about it a lot. It's one of the greatest reasons and benefits that I've gotten out of this is the fact that I can connect and meet with new people. And that's other creators, that's people who are further along in their journey than me, and others who are just starting. And that's been one of the most rewarding things. So there are lots of different ways to network and connect with people. And I think it's important to know that there's a difference there. Yes, Katie, I was in a very similar position to you. I graduated with $100,000 in student loan debt plus a car loan. So it was a challenging time for me when I first got out, because I had a lot of ambition, but I couldn't really see a path in which I was able to do what I wanted and to have a life that was free, where I could make decisions without worrying about this debt weighing me down, where I didn't have to make every decision based upon financial return and the money that I was making. So I ended up moving home with my parents. I lived with them for 2 years, and that wasn't enough time to pay off all of that debt. I think I left with $60,000 in student loan debt. But I had come to a place where I was ready to make a calculated risk. And you've probably heard me talk about this before, because I think that's such an important thing for your peace of mind. A lot of people will try to just push you to make the leap and make the jump before you're ready. But I think that if you do that, if you're truly not prepared for the risk of leaving the safety and security of your home to go move to a bigger city where it can be very challenging to adapt, you need to be ready and prepared for when things go inevitably wrong. So make sure you have that savings. Make sure you have enough money that in case things do go wrong, you have an emergency fund you can tap into. You have clients, you have a little bit of a base. There's always going to be a point where you feel like the jump is scary and you're not ready for it, but eventually you're going to have to take that leap. That is all saying that this is something that you really want to do. So for me, moving to New York was more a personal lifestyle choice than it was about work and business. I think it's a good additional benefit, obviously being in New York, but it really, the in-person networking and stuff, apart from meeting a few people, it wasn't the end all be all of my business. It did radically change my personal life. Really, actually, one of the main things was dating. I was living in the hometown I grew up in, and apart from the people that I, knew in high school, there was nobody that you could date. And that didn't feel good to me. Trying to go back into the old dating pool wasn't a good look. So I decided to move to New York mainly for that reason and just to improve my social life. So make sure you know the reason why you want to move. And if you're nervous about it, if you're thinking about saying, all right, maybe in 1 year, I'm going to give myself 1 year and I'm going to get to the point where I'm ready to move out and move to a new city and take on that challenge. Before you do that, I'd recommend taking 1 week and staying at an Airbnb or living like a local in the city that you want to move to. Because so often we get these ideas in our mind, like you look at the typical career path, say, of our parents' generation. It was people that the path was laid out in front of them. You work for 30 years, 35 years. Then when you're done, you retire, and then you can travel and vacation and do all the things that you wanted to. You're going to wait until you're 65. You're going to wait until the end of your life until you start living and experiencing travel and do all these things. Maybe you should try to do that before the moment of your retirement. Maybe you should set aside some time to realize, oh, maybe full-time travel isn't something I would like. Maybe I never want to retire. Those are important questions that you should be asking yourself. So I would say take a week and travel to the place where you want to move to and try to live like a local, experience it, go to coffee shops. At that point, you can even start to network, and it would actually give you a good sense to see how easy it is to network. How easy is it to schedule in lunch dates and breakfast dates and coffee with people to pick their brain. I would never ask to pick somebody's brain. You're not adding value by picking somebody else's brain. You need to somehow add value. Whether it's, I will treat you to coffee, that's certainly adding value. There are lots of ways to do it, and those are just a few. But yeah, take calculated risks and don't jump before you're ready, but jump before you're ready, if that makes sense. Because you shouldn't jump before you actually are ready, but you're going to jump before you think you're ready. That totally makes sense. That's definitely, I'm happy with that thought process. Dominic, I wonder what your thoughts are on planning projects or life in general. I tend to pack my days full of to-dos and even getting a lot of things done. I tend to feel guilty about the things I haven't got done because I plan too much or underestimate the time it takes. I'm approaching time boxing for some days now, and it seems to help. I have no idea what time boxing is, but I feel you. I feel the pain, Dominic. Very commonly used quote. We overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. So don't get too hard on yourself if you didn't get enough done today. What's more important, and something I think I mentioned earlier, is that you're keeping up these consistent habits. So, right, it's like that writing 50 words a day. It doesn't feel like a lot in the moment. 50 words might not feel like a lot, but if you're not writing at all, it's a hell of a lot more. It's 50, not 50 times more, because that's not how math works, but it's 50 words more. Try to keep that daily practice, and every once in a while, pretty frequently, you're probably not going to get as much done as you thought, as much on the to-do list as you had planned for. But that's okay, because you can just push it to the next day. But make sure that you're not pushing back things that are important because you're scared to do them. A lot of times we push back that phone call, that client call, that discussion with a partner because it feels uncomfortable. and there's going to be a lot of pain that comes with bringing those things up, a lot of insecurities. So I got to say, you just have to approach those conversations as quickly and readily as possible. And then you're going to learn from it, and then you can grow, and then you can move on to the next thing on your to-do list. I got a audio clip here from Carl.
Hey Matt, so I work in an agency which, as you can probably imagine, is very much driven by multitasking as an approach. I just wondered if you had any advice on how to be better at single tasking in a career that's very much driven by the idea of multitasking. Cheers.
I never really got the whole multitasking thing. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense, does it? Like, how do people actually multitask? It's not like you're on the phone talking to somebody and at the same time you're answering emails and then, you're making tea. Besides from maybe the tea thing, maybe you can make tea while on the phone and I can give you that as multitasking. Although I think there's plenty of time in the day that we don't need to be doing multiple things at once. I had Anthony Ungaro on the podcast and he talks about monotasking. That episode was called Minimize Distractions, and in it we talk about his story, but also we delve into specifics about how minimalism and how it can help us to lead a more intentional life. But he talks about just monotasking. What would it mean to me, and what would happen if I woke up this morning and I just made a cup of coffee, I sat down at the table, and I just drank the coffee. I just enjoyed that cup of coffee from beginning to end. That would be hard. I've never done that. Like sometimes I'll sit and I'll have a cup of coffee, but before I finish it, I'm off doing something else. My mind runs wild. There are ways in which we can slow down to actually enjoy the day a little bit more. Now I know your question was specifically, what's that? See that? It's 3:00 and I got a check email notification. I know I told you it was 2, but today, since I did a podcast earlier today, kind of pushed my whole schedule back. But anyway, there you go. You see, that's how I do it. I set alarms for myself in the morning or the day before. And that way I never miss a thing. But now I will miss checking email today. Oh, well. Speaking of email, if you're constantly working out of your inbox, you're constantly distracted, it may feel like multitasking. It may feel like you're doing multiple things at once. But I think what you'll find is that you're actually just starting and stopping over and over again. You'll start this task, and then you'll stop doing that to work on another task, and then you'll go back to that task, and then somebody hands you a piece of paper, and then you got to work on that report. And it's really not as productive as you might think or as it might feel. I suggest batching tasks. So like I do with the email or social media, be really thoughtful, intentional, set alarms for when you can do stuff. We're Neanderthals. Our brains are not very good. We tend to just follow the shiniest object, whether that's a notification or a piece of candy. We are very much drawn to these things. And I've found personally that it helps to try to just cut it off completely. It may be difficult for you. And actually, so the batching also goes to emails, phone calls, all that stuff. Like you can set it for certain days. So with the podcast, I usually only record on Tuesdays, Wednesdays. Sometimes it changes, but I like to know that, okay, those are the 2 days a week when I film and record podcasts. Phone calls, I'll schedule all phone calls on Wednesdays, right? So then that way there's almost like some structure to it. There's some balance. I always have a couple free days completely open to do all my work. In a perfect world, I actually have way more than that. But, Carl, you work in an agency. This may be challenging for you to do. It may not be possible to cancel all your meetings and schedule phone calls during one day out of the week. So in a real way, you have to kind of deal with the real world, and you have to figure out where you can bend the rules or the status quo. And to be honest, if I was your boss, and that's West Hollywood for you guys. It's yep. People, why are people so angry? Why do people always beep that loud? Like you're not helping there's traffic. You're not going to the horn isn't going to move the cars quicker. It's just going to make people around you angry and mad. So don't do that. That's really annoying. Okay. But anyway, you got to work within the rules. But like, say if I was your boss, if you're getting more work done, if you're more productive, that's all that I care about. So see what you can to make that happen, but it may be a challenge. Guido, I have a 9-to-5 job and also go to university from 6 to 2200 hours and trying to build a side business. The problem itself is that when I have some free time to work, I have no energy after all the work I've done that week and going to classes and also studying on the weekends. Do you have any tips? Wake up earlier. There's a book called My Miracle Morning. I think it's an audiobook that I listen to. So corny. I'm sorry. I think the guy's name is Hal. Sorry. It's a kind of a corny book. It's a little bit cheesy, but it helped me when I was listening to it and kind of inspired me. And I love to, if I'm trying to build a habit, I want a book or an audiobook or a podcast or something around that topic that can help me stay motivated while I continue to build this habit. So for me, when I was doing the batching and the emails and all that stuff, I was reading Deep Work. And there might be a time when I slip up and I'm not doing as well with that habit, in which case I will reread the book. I'll pick the book back up. I may not finish it. It may be just enough to kickstart that habit loop again. And I remember the reasons why this was important to me to build this. And then I can get back on course. But for you find yourself tired at the end of the day or at the end of the week, and you don't have enough energy to pursue your passion. You have to wake up early and do it in the morning, because that's the only time that you're going to have the energy to get the work done. If you've realized that you're not going to be able to do it late at night. Some people are night owls. Some people that might actually work better. But if you find yourself so tired that you can't get the work done, I feel like that's the only option if you want to make this work. I had somebody reach out on a YouTube comment, and I had suggested for content creators, they should be making one piece of great content every week. If that's what they want to do, if they want to focus on their craft, say if they want to be a filmmaker, make one great video every single week. And this guy wrote this comment, and it was just all the excuses that he could, muster. It was, I'm 45 years old, I'm too old, I don't have the energy, I don't have the time to make one video every week. How am I ever going to do that? I have a full-time job. I've got kids, this and that. And so he came up with all these excuses. And maybe it's not for him. It's probably not. It doesn't sound like it is. If you can't make one video a week, and this is truly what you're passionate about and what you want to dedicate your life to, you're never going to make it. Like, nobody's going to hand you this opportunity or do it for you. So that's kind of, I think, the hard love that some people need sometimes is it may not be for everybody. I understand it's hard and it's a lot of work. And if you have kids and all these other things going on in your life, it can be very, very challenging. But if you're not willing to dedicate just the bare minimum of what it takes to move one step towards your goal, then you're never going to get there. Yoon Sun, I've got a video.
My question was, how do you not let people take advantage of you? Or how do you not say yes all the time? For me, I don't want to miss out on the work, so I end up, saying yes to a lot of work, and then I end up having too much work. So I'm just trying to figure out, what's a healthy way of just balancing all of that and not being taken advantage of. And also, when friends ask for things too, how to deal with that if, because I don't, most of the time, don't want to charge my friends for anything. But anyways, thanks again for having your podcast. It's been really awesome just, seeing everyone's process and knowing that I'm not alone. All right. Thanks. Bye.
Great. Thanks, Yoon. I really appreciate you sending in that video. You have to say yes to everything in the beginning. Most stuff. If it's in line with your values and your ethics, then say yes to as much as you can. Do as much work as you can. I started out doing filming birthday parties, 65th birthday parties, bar mitzvah intro videos, local TV commercials, all that stuff that wasn't sexy, but it built up my experience and it helped me to start actually building a business. Because if you don't have clients, if you're not making money, then you do not have a business. So that's the first thing. But if you look back over 5 years of doing this and you're still saying yes to everything, then there's a problem. The problem probably is that you're not charging enough. So charge more money. If you're charging the same rate as when you started 5 years ago, you're doing something very wrong. You should be incrementally higher. That shift was radical for me. It changed everything, because when I started to make those leaps up, I would do some projects that would be the same rate as if I had done 10 bar mitzvah videos or 10 weddings. The amount of work that goes into 10 weddings, it's hard to describe. You're talking 10 weekends, probably 25 weeks of editing. And then also all the emails. Think about all the back and forth. There's 20, 30 emails back and forth answering groom's questions and bride's questions. So there's so much time that goes into that. But then if I all of a sudden do one project, that's only one email thread I have to deal with. That's way less work than I was previously doing. And I'm making just as much money, if not more money. So see how you can charge more for the work that you're doing. And even if you increase 25 to 50% every so often, you're in a much better place. As far as doing free work for friends, just you got to get used to saying no. You can make excuses. Sorry, I'm too busy. I'm a little overwhelmed with work right now. I can't do anything. I'm not exactly sure what you do for work, but people have asked me oftentimes, and I just tell them, sorry. Like, I do this for work. This is what I do all day. This is my job. It'd be like me asking you, if you're an accountant, and be like, hey, by the way, I know you love accounting. It would be really fun if you did my accounting for the year, wouldn't it? Like, no, that wouldn't be fun. Your friends should value you and actually want to support you. So that's something I would encourage everybody listening to this podcast. If you have a friend who's an artist, who's struggling, who's trying to make things happen, who makes prints for a living, and they're just getting into it, buy a couple prints, support your friend's art. That is where it starts. It should really start from your family and friends. Those should be the ones that are helping. But also don't try to sell to family and friends. I'm just telling you guys to do that for your family and friends, but don't expect it from people. Yeah, cool. But then, say yes in the beginning. Later on is when you want to say no, because later on is when you get so busy, when you're making enough money that it's not as important. You don't need those individual jobs anymore. So that's the ideal, and that's what you have to work towards. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but I wish you luck on your journey. This is Kenneth.
Hi, Matt. My name is Kenneth. I recently found your show. I have been listening to it for the past 2 weeks, just straight up been listening to it. And it's been so helpful, because you and your guest always bring something fresh on every episode. I recently moved to Italy, and it's been difficult. I've been struggling with the language, and I have been finding it difficult to get the word out on my craft, that I'm into filmmaking and everything around video production. I would like to know, what would you do if you were in my shoes? How would you try to get the word out that you're into filmmaking, you're into video production, and how would you try to walk around it and let people know that this is exactly what you do, and that they should hire you and give you jobs? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Also, lastly, thanks for the Ground Up show. It's been so helpful. And please, keep rocking.
Thanks, Kenneth. You keep rocking too. That's a great question. And I just love how it's phrased, like, oh, what would I do? If I really put myself in your position, I'm starting over in a new country. I'm trying to, be a filmmaker. I'm not sure how much experience Kenneth has, but let's just say like moderate, like a little bit of experience. And you're kind of just starting over. There's a lot that you can do, a lot of different things that you can do. You can't do everything. So here's a couple suggestions. One, this is actually not a suggestion. The first one is just keep working, keep making videos. You got to keep honing that craft, keep working on it. So as many days a week as you can allot. You don't actually have to be working on actual projects. You can be shooting your own videos in your apartment. You can be shooting videos around Italy, like just B-roll, like getting better at cinematography. If your skill isn't there yet where you're getting booked out all the time, then you have to make sure that skill level is raised up a bar. Look up Craigslist, find different odd jobs, find whatever job you can. I was on Craigslist like a maniac when I first started out. I would take any job I could. Some jobs would be great. Some jobs would be not so great. I remember filming, I think it was a company called like Cheesesteak Tees, and they didn't sell cheesesteak. They sold T-shirts, and it was on South Street in Philadelphia. And they had this mascot, and I shot these sketch comedy videos with like this puppet mascot and this girl, and it was just like they were going on a date, and then this is gross. He gets nervous and he jizzes cheese all over the woman's, all over her face and her chest, and it's kind of inappropriate. But I did that. It was on Craigslist. I found the job. I did it. I think I made $400 for the video, shot, edited. I didn't write it. I want that to be clear. I did not write that video. But that's what you do. You get whatever jobs you can. You say yes to everything you can, and then you keep building up that experience. You keep getting better to the point when you can start to say no. Start to try to make connections. Find people around the same level as you. That's certainly going to be, I think, the easiest connections to start making, and then they may be able to tell you where they've gotten some jobs from, where the best place to go is. They also might be able to give you jobs when they are booked up on a shoot. That happens all the time. So if when I was a freelancer, would have a booking for a certain day, a client comes to me that I respect. If I know somebody who's really good, of course, I'm going to try to connect them and make sure that they have somebody that they can go to. That client will usually, in 99% of the time, just come back to you at the end of the day. Or they could outsource that job to you and like manage it to you. So that connection works. Of course, you can try to meet up with higher up people, directors, producers, whatever. That's more challenging, especially if your skill level is not there yet. But it's worth a shot. And the last things that you can do is read a lot of books. Like this podcast, that's a great thing to do. Just keep listening and keep reading things that are going to help you on your path, because when you're a creative, it's not just about the creative art. You need to actually master the business side of things. So I have a couple book recommendations here. Seth Godin, incredible author. So he was a pioneer of like marketing and marketing writing. He's got this daily blog that he continues to write for. He wrote a book called Permission Marketing early on at the beginning of the internet, and it is still relevant to this day. He's got a book called Lynchpin, The Dip, and a few others. Like he's got like 20 books, but he's always a good source to go to on business, entrepreneurship. He helps out a lot. And also The Art of Possibility. Ben and Roz Zander wrote that book, and it's got a lot of stories, it's got a lot of life lessons, and it's super inspiring for anybody who is having trouble finding their path. Thank you for your question, Kenneth, and good luck in Italy. Another question here.
I've been a minimalist since 2017, and I'm a college student. Usually as a college student, we have a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Since I'm a minimalist, I have really less stuff compared to what my friends have. And not only they keep asking why I choose to live this way, but also they ask me why living with less stuff can make you happier. So can you please help me to explain this? Or at least, what should I tell to my friend? I've tried a few times, but it seems they didn't get a whole point about living with less stuff actually can make them or us happier than before. So, thank you. Goodbye.
Manuel from, I think he said Indonesia. Thank you so much for sending in that question. It's a good one. I would say, fuck what other people think, first of all. Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, if people don't think that it's, interesting or helpful for their lives, you're likely not going to convince them or argue their way out of their position. So in terms of letting go of stuff, you could also let go of, control. You're probably not going to be able to change your family and friends. The only way you might be able to is if you show them. And I'm not literally talking about showing them you boxing things up and putting things into bags to bring to recycling or to donate. It's just showing them that, you live life a little bit lighter and life is a little bit easier. Now that you're a minimalist, you have more time for the things that you really care about. Without saying that stuff. I honestly don't talk about minimalism much, as hard as that might be to believe, because I make videos all the time about minimalism and I talk about it on this podcast quite a bit. I made a documentary. I don't talk about it that much because it's just in the background, right? It guides a lot of the decisions that I make in my life, but minimalism is not something that I'm spending a whole lot of time thinking about. And I talk about it enough, like through these platforms, that if somebody wants to talk, on the street about minimalism, because that happens all the time. People all the time, they come up to me, they say, "Hey Matt, you want to talk about minimalism?" And I say, "Sure." I would talk about it, but it never comes up. So, just know that it works for you, and it might not work for other people that you know. And letting that go is probably going to make you even happier. That way you're not holding on. Martin, should I quit video games and focus on creating art? I think gaming takes up most of my time. It's kind of hard to answer that question because it's like you're asking for like such pointed advice. Maybe if he was a professional video gamer, then he should spend more time video gaming. But I'm guessing that he spends a lot of time video gaming, and that's distracting him from focusing on his art. So probably you need a little bit more balance in your life. You need to let go of the video games a little bit. That said, you don't have to cut video games out completely. I play video games from time to time. Oh man, I just played again for like the third time The Last of Us. I'm sure some people at least have heard of that video game. So good. It taught me so much about storytelling in general, like from filmmaking perspective. It was so emotional. I've never been so emotional while playing a video game. It was so good. And I think there's things that we can learn from video games. I think they're fun. I think they give us a nice break, just like movies and TV shows do. So I don't think you have to totally give them up. But again, if it's sucking up too much of your time, you may want to think about scheduling in your video game time during specific periods so you have more time to create your art. Janeth. Hi, I know you have a busy schedule, and I was just wondering if you could share the titles of the books you read that helped you stay focused on paying off your student loans. The main one was Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. That was the big book that I first read about personal finance that helped to set me on the right path. Now, it's hard when you're in debt because you can only get up to maybe chapter 3, and then at that point, it's everything post-debt what you do. I still read the thing all the way through because I was kind of excited, and it got me amped up to see, okay, in a couple of years, this is where I'll be. These are the decisions that I'm going to be making. But that was the main book. I would definitely start with that one. It's so simple. Again, a little bit corny. I'm not shy when it comes to reading corny material, but I do like to let people know that I know that it's corny just because I don't want you to judge me. But, that's a good book. Let's see, who else? Chris Guillebeau, The Art of Nonconformity, was a helpful book early on. It's also a lot of the books that I read that helped me were entrepreneurial. So again, Seth Godin books were super inspiring at that time. Ramit Sethi, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. That's another book on personal finance. A lot of similar tactics and strategies as Dave Ramsey's, but a little bit more modern. He doesn't focus as much on cutting back on coffee and these small little things that probably won't amount to much over a long period of time, and focuses on the big wins. So how can you get a smaller mortgage? How can you pay off your student loans a little bit quicker? I will say the one thing that helped me the most was really the snowball effect, which was, I think, through Dave Ramsey, but it's quite common now in personal finance. And that is paying off your smallest student loans first. I kind of did a little bit of a hack around that. So I tried to pay off, I had all these like monthly payments. I had about like 7 or 8 of them. And my highest one was like $620. And then it was $400. And then it was $250 and $25 per month. So I started to say, all right, I'll take that top one, and it's a $20,000 loan. It wasn't my smallest loan in total, but it was the biggest burden in terms of my monthly payments. And I paid every extra dollar I got besides my emergency fund, I paid towards it. It wasn't my money that I was making at that time. It was the bank's money. I just kept paying it off. And then once I got to the point where I paid off one of those, what a good feeling. Like, that's $600 a month that I no longer have to pay in student loans. It felt so good, and it freed me up. And that's how I was able to move out of my parents' house, because I freed up my monthly bills to the point where I could make that leap without feeling overwhelmed, without feeling like, oh, how am I going to be able to pay off all these student loans and my, car payment and my rent. So that was hugely helpful for me, and hopefully it will help you as well. Thanks for the question, Janet. I got a question from Nick here. It's our final video/audio question.
First off, hi. Thank you so much for making the podcast that you make. I find inspiration in it every single time I listen, specifically that one with the video editor and then the documentarian. Those two were spectacular. I have moved around a lot, and I have been pretty much a mobile filmmaker and photographer for most of my professional life. And my problem is trying to take the next step from being a part-time employee at some company and a part-time freelancer to just doing full-time freelance work. When do you know it's the right time, or is there a right time? And what are some key things business-wise that people like me can keep in mind when they make the transition to a full-time filmmaker or full-time photographer or otherwise a full-time creative? Thank you so much for your time.
First of all, Nick, you are in an amazing position right now, because you're already starting the transition. Even if you don't feel like you're in the middle of that transition. You have a part-time job that is related to your craft. You also have the part-time freelance filmmaking that you're doing that you want to transition to completely. One thing I gotta say from the start: do not steal your clients from your previous client. That's a big no-no. I'm sure you know that, Nick. You obviously, you seem like a good guy, but I think for everybody else, we need to know this. There are certain boundaries, and if somebody is helping you and giving you a job, it's probably not appropriate to steal their clients. So is there ever a right time? Probably not. It's never going to feel like the right time to make that jump and to make that leap, but make sure you are, as I said before, I've probably said a couple times this podcast, making calculated risks. So making sure that you are ready to make that jump. But at some point, you're just going to have to do it. You're just going to have to say, you know what, screw it. Even if I only make $15,000 this year, it's going to open myself up to creating more of my own original content. The thing is, when you are freelancing, if you edit as, say, like, let's talk about filmmaking specifically. When you are both filming and editing, and you can actually pitch full rate projects. You're not just working by the hour. You're saying, hey, this is what the rate is. Which means that you can charge anything you want. And you don't have to say, okay, some clients would lose their shit if they knew that for some videos, I charge them $500 an hour, because that's just how long it took. I wasn't actually charging them that per hour. I was like, all right, this project's going to be $3,000 because it's just a quick video that I can cut together in a couple hours. And if I said, hey, I'm going to charge $1,000 an hour for this video, they would never say yes. So you have more control over what you charge, which is really helpful when you're growing that business. make sure you have an emergency fund. Make sure you have extra savings. That's definitely going to help you. And read a bunch of books. So I'm probably not going to be able to give you the best business advice. The best advice I've gotten are from books that I've previously mentioned, like Seth Godin, Chris Guillebeau. Definitely check them out. And one book that I will recommend that specifically is going to help you is called The Flinch by Julian Smith. And this book helped me out a lot. I remember reading it when I was living at home in my parents' basement. It is a very short book. You can probably read it in a night, maybe two. And it is super inspiring. It kicks you right in the ass. Nick, you seem like the kind of guy that would get a lot of value from this book. When I think it was free on Amazon last time I checked it, but don't let that fool you because it's worth way more than that. And even if it's $10, like definitely just buy that book. It was published actually under the same publishing company as Seth Godin. But get it, and that I think will help to inspire you and push you to make this leap. But don't do it before you're ready. And that's the last question. Wow, we did it. And just at an hour too. So hope that was helpful to you guys. I know a lot of this advice can sometimes be repetitive. I can cover the same thing multiple times and a lot of questions have the same answer. But that is really by design because a lot of advice that I give is simple. It's straightforward. It's the putting it into practice. It's the taking action that is the hardest thing. So we know a lot about what we should do. We know the right food to eat and the diets that we should be on and the workout routines that we probably should be taking. But we do not bridge the gap. We do not connect the dots from knowledge to action. And that's what you need to work on. That's why you need to incorporate these daily practices and build up the habits and routines that are going to help make them stick. So I hope you guys enjoyed this bonus podcast episode. This has been a lot of fun. I love hearing from you and getting your questions. And if you liked it, I'll continue to do more of these. And we'll catch back up with the next Wednesday, or whichever is the Wednesday after this. I think I'm going to release this on a Monday, so you'll have another podcast in a couple days. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.